All right. So the way to think about this is don't think of it as a conspiracy theory. Just think about it as, here we have these structures. How do we really think they were built? So we'll start off with, I'll read you guys off a few little, facts about the pyramids, and we'll just go from there. So, according to current archaeology, they think they were, the Great Pyramid was the tallest man-made structure for about 3,800 years, and it stands 481 feet tall. Now think about, how are you going to build something 481 feet tall back in those days? There's a lot of theories that go on about how the Egyptians made the pyramids. I think the main theory is they wet the sand and they actually scooted the big blocks along that wet sand. But keep in mind, the main quarry to where they chiseled out this limestone was 500 miles away. And some of these things would weigh about 4 or 5, up to 10 tons each. Now you think about, okay, they're going to push a 10-ton block 500 miles. And then when they do push it 500 miles, how are they going to get it 481 feet in the air? There were no cranes back then. And but there's an estimated 2.5 million blocks in the Great Pyramid. Now, they say it took about 23 years to build the pyramid. Now, that's a rate. Now, keep in mind, we've got blocks up to 10 tons that were brought 500 miles from this quarry. Now this we know for sure. They know that, this limestone wasn't in the desert. They had to go here. There's they can see where they got the rock, the limestone from. In order to complete this thing in 23 years, they had to lay 12 blocks a minute. So how are we going to get them 500 miles? How are we going to push a 10-ton stone, get it 400 feet in the air, and do 12 of them a minute? So what you got, Daniel?
Well, I don't know much about the geographical location in Egypt at all, or where the pyramids are, but were they helped by the Nile at all?
Could have been. Nobody knows. That's like I was telling you guys. I wouldn't call this episode of the Do Bash. I wouldn't call it a conspiracy theory show. This is really just what we think happened, how we think the pyramids were built. There's a lot of theories. There's the alien theory, which may seem silly to a lot of people. It doesn't seem silly to some people. Then there's the theory that it took 10 to 50,000 slaves. But I think now they've confirmed that it wasn't built by slaves. It was built by actual professional construction, like I guess companies that were, around back then. But I don't know, man. It's kind of shady. I just, plus some of those blocks were cut, and placed so perfectly that you can't put a sheet of paper in between them. So it's kind of interesting to what you guys think. How do you think they were made? In my honest opinion, we had to have help doing it. I just don't see any other way. People, 5,000 years ago, cut those blocks, moved them 500 miles. And then when we did get them here, we had to get them 500 feet in the air. It's hard to get something 500 feet in the air now, let alone, 4,000 years ago. So the floor is open. What do you guys think?
I'll let you guys go first because mine's going to be completely different from all y'all's.
Why would
it? Aliens. It ain't aliens. It ain't giants. None of that. Go ahead.
Well, what do you think? Let's go.
I'm going to get blasted as soon as I say it. So,
there's no wrong answer because at the end of the day, nobody knows. I mean,
go ahead, Daniel.
Well, all right. So, for starters, what I was going to say is the way that I'm kind of thinking about it is Egypt used to be like huge. It used to be like a mecca of like when you say slave labor, I don't necessarily consider it slave labor. They had so many people there that they ingratiated themselves in the whole culture, I guess, right? And they all become kind of like one. And so you had all of these different trades that people did back then. And so when I say slave labor, I don't necessarily mean slave labor. Uh, but, you know, people, humans, obviously had to be pretty smart in order to be able to do it. So I want to give these people back then the credit that they deserve. They were able to do stuff without today's technology. I don't know what kind of technology they had back then, but I don't want to discredit these people. But when I say slave labor, I mean there were a lot of different people from a lot of different cultures that were in Egypt at the time, and I think maybe there was some professional tradesmen. And that's kind of my idea on it. What's some of y'all's idea?
Well, I'll say this. I think the whole the slave thing has turned up to be a myth. I think now it says many people believe that the Great Pyramids were built by slaves following a theory developed by some guy, Herodotus, but studies have shown that skilled artists and paid workers actually contributed to the construction of the Great Wonder. The builders were highly respected, well fed, and paid. Also, the workers who died during the construction were buried with jars of food next to the pharaohs. And that was a sign of respect and honor, which still, it's all hearsay, but obviously now they think that, slaves weren't used. It was actually paid workers. But at the same time, with my tinfoil hat on, how you going to pay up to 50,000 people, back in those days
Well,
to do work?
if you're in a desert, you feed them. I mean, that was the only river anywhere around there. That's the only water source there. That's why they were civilization on the water banks, because you couldn't hang out. You couldn't run down a camel and go across the desert and hope to find some water. Everybody lived near the river, and back then the river was higher, and it was closer to the pyramids back then. It's changed now because the desert's getting bigger. You know what I'm saying? So they had access to the waterways. They were closer to the pyramids then than they are now. So they could have floated them down. I mean, here's the thing. All right, they say it takes 23 years to build a pyramid, okay? Now, when you make a cake, or let's do it a little easier. Let's say you're making mashed potatoes, all right? You don't, as soon as you peel a potato, you don't throw that in a pot of boiling water. You know what I'm saying? You get everything together first. Get the trash can for the skin you're peeling off. You get a bowl over here so you can wash your potatoes. It's all in steps, same thing. If we have that many steps in making mashed potatoes, how many steps do you think professional masons had 25 or 5,000 years ago, however old it was, to build a pyramid? So I think they had everything in place. They had the rocks cut, had them in place. It may have taken them 23 years to place the block, but I think they had it in place before they started building.
And that's a possibility. I'll tell you how I think. I have basically two theories about it, and the main theory that's catching hold these days is and there's a lot of things that go into this theory, but the main theory now is that the Egyptians actually inherited the pyramids. It's possible that because inside the pyramids there's no hieroglyphics or anything like that, and I forget how it is they even, like the Great Pyramid, they've never found a body or anything like a mummy or anything in there. It seems to be like we've lost a chapter in human history, and I listened to an episode about this the other day on Joe Rogan, and there's just a lot of evidence showing, man, maybe there was a civilization before the Egyptians that had the technology to do this. And there's a thing called the Younger Dryas. And it's something that it's where like a lot of comets, and all this is proven, a lot of comets at one time hit the earth, and we think we actually have lost a period of our history. And a lot of people, you know, the archaeologists don't want to even look at that, but you know, you can go and you can look at the evidence, and it's real staggering. And I really think maybe, you know, we had the technology to build these pyramids, however, whatever it was. And I think maybe when that Younger Dryas event happened, I think we actually lost a lot of our history that we don't have no clue what we lost. You know what I'm saying? Matt, you're being awful quiet. What are you thinking, buddy?
Well, I don't think it was aliens. I don't think it was that, because, I mean, if you give me 20, 30 years and access to thousands and thousands of people, and I don't have to really pay or do anything, I'm going to figure some stuff out. And you think about a pyramid, it's the easiest thing to build because you can't knock it over. It's not a building. You know, it's not going to lean. You know, it's going to have, even if it has corrosion or erosion over time, you're still going to have the same pyramid structure. So I don't think aliens had anything to do with it. I don't know what they're for, but I don't think that aliens did that, because if aliens can do that, why didn't they do everything else if they're so technological advanced? Why weren't they building metal pyramids with lots and stuff? So,
well, you know, the pyramids were covered in white limestone, and the top of them was actually tipped in gold. Did you guys know that? And through the years, all that stuff is worn off. So the pyramids, what you're seeing now is just the inner shell of them. They were actually smooth, and they were white with gold tips.
yeah,
And they're,
I don't know, man. To me, I mean, I think if it's, I don't know. I mean, you know, I believe in aliens. I really do. But it's just, I don't know. I don't know if they had anything to do with that or not. I just don't think they did. But I get what you're saying.
I don't think that the aliens did. They were too busy running away from the predators that were coming down to hunt them.
Xenomorphs.
well, now you guys, there's a chamber in the Great Pyramid called the King's Chamber, and it's the highest chamber in the pyramid. And inside this pyramid, it's made by slabs of stone. They're like 10 tons apiece. And these stones were cut so precise that you can see your reflection in them. Like, you know what your marble countertops look like? They're that smooth. And I'm not going to say it was aliens, because I'll just be straight with everybody out here. I believe that we're not the only life in the universe. I think you have to be very naive to not think there's other life out there. But I don't think we built these pyramids by pushing these stones through wet sand either. You know, maybe like Travis said, maybe they were able to float them, because I know Egypt was a oasis. Like, it had water everywhere back in those days. It was lush with forests and jungles and stuff like that. So there is the theory that they floated them, and that's possible. And that's also the theory how they could have got them up so high, is they actually flooded as they went up, they flooded it, so that floated the blocks up. Go ahead, Matt.
Well, you know, and I look at everything and I kind of take everything in consideration, because I mean, it's always possible. Nothing's ever zero. There's nothing in this life that really ever zero. But you look at, like, when the Wright brothers started, you know, air flight. I mean, did you think that would have been possible? Did you think humans would be able to fly like that when they were starting it?
No, there ain't no way.
No, I wouldn't think so either. So, I mean, I think it's probably highly likely that humans built the pyramids, but I don't know as to why. I don't know how.
Well, they had electricity back then. I mean, they found the Baghdad batteries, and
Yep.
you know, it's just, I mean, so there's hieroglyphs in there, and it looks like, first they thought it was like a fertility hieroglyph, you know, because where dude's holding a light, but it looks like
that big light bulb. Yeah.
it looks like a light bulb with a filament in it, And so, there wasn't any like smoke marks or scorch marks or anything in there. And like a lighter won't even light inside of it because, you got to have so much oxygen for fire to, be fire. So I'm sure that they had access to electricity through the invention of the Baghdad battery. So I'm sure that's how they had lights in there for when they were building it. But, we call that big area the King's Tomb. We don't know what they called it. It could have been anything. But, see, we look at it like this. All right. If you've seen a ship in a bottle, you've seen those models where people put ships in a bottle and they got little tools and they're putting little pieces in there like this and that. All right. Well, you wouldn't have to do that if you knew how to make a bottle. You know what I'm saying? These people knew how to make the pyramids, so they didn't have to build all that heavy stuff that's on the inside last. They could have built that as they went. And, there's thousands of people and all of them have professions. Back then, it wasn't working 9 to 5 in a damn factory. It was, hey, my job is to cut these stones out and, my job is to carry them up there. So if they're right on the equator, so they're going to get at least 12 hours of sunshine, right?
Right.
So they got 12 hours to work, or more than that. They might have 15 hours to work, and they do it all day long because that's their job. That's the only way they get to eat. There ain't much to hunt out there. I mean, they had a huge trade system being right there on the river. But that's what I think about it.
Dusty, you're being awful quiet, buddy. Key in on this. Let's hear it.
Well, I think as to the why they were built, I think one of the things I read years ago is that it tied into as sort of the cult of Osiris, who was the god of the dead. The three pyramids line up with the 3 stars of Orion's belt.
Mm-hmm.
The largest one of which is called Sirius, the dog star. That's what we call it. I kind of believe, and I really like the theory of where they were able to build these sort of barges and ferry them down, and then maybe they disassembled maybe once they got them on land, they used the ships and they used the rolling system where they were able to, you grab the log and you bring it to the front, and you pull it, and you sort of, and then you just roll it along the logs, and you move the back log to the front again and just kind of wheel it that way up to the front. I don't know. I mean, maybe the technology of how to do it was lost whenever the Library of Alexandria was burned.
Right.
We do know that when the Romans a few centuries later tried to invade Syracuse, that Archimedes had a working winch that literally was pulling their ships completely out of the water. And these are those huge, almost a variant of the Greek trireme ships. So these are, several ton ships, and it was pulling them out enough out of the water to where it was crashing them when they were trying to breach the walls. So was it original idea? Did he have inspiration from something else? We don't know. I think you've got a mixture of where you have these skilled artisans, but you also have slaves from Egyptian conquest that maybe they were a part of it, but part of the Egyptian tax system too was also you gave so much service every year to the crown, so to speak. So along with giving so much of what you grew or your labor, you also had, if you were a skilled artisan, you also, volunteered on the road crew or something like that. And
Right.
you put in a few hours and built a couple of houses or something for the glory of the empire. And that was a part of your taxes to the crown, so to speak.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Now, I didn't know any of that, so I've learned like a lot already.
You can
I feel like I'm sitting
thank
here
the
watching National Geographic right now,
Yeah.
you can thank the Egyptians for creating what we have now as the tax system. So thanks, guys.
I appreciate that.
And the Knights Templars for banking.
Yeah.
But all right, well, like, I don't know anybody that can build, all right, there's Sand Island out there, okay, out here in Watts Bar. But I don't know anybody that can build like a little pathway from the swimming area, right next to the dam all the way out there. You know what I'm saying? All right. In the year whenever Alexander was making his way down into Egypt, they didn't sail over there. They marched. They went around the Mediterranean. So when they got to, there was an island, I think that's where the city of Tyre was or whatever. It's on a peninsula now because when Alexander got down there, he didn't have ships to attack that island. And they were, and you'll never get to us, whatever. He built that peninsula to that island so his army could get there. You know what I'm saying? And he just rolled out there. He didn't take scientists and stuff like that with him and people that knew how to like make land. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's still there. It's on. You can see it on the map. I mean, it never went away. And this was an army. So if an army can do that, if they had the knowledge to do that, just think about what a skilled artisan had that lived and grew up in Egypt and had like they believed pyramids was the way to their heaven or whatever, So, I mean, there was a technology they had. I don't think it was, power drills and stuff like that. But, I mean, like he said, the library in Alexandria before it burned, Cleopatra, according to the history books, was the smartest person in the world at that time because there were 9 written languages and she could speak, read, and write all of them. And she put most of the books that were written in that library. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of history that we lost in that fire.
Exactly. Go ahead, Dust.
I was going to say, speaking on Alexander, where he built that causeway and connected Tyre to the mainland, it only took him a few months, and that's part of the reason why he annihilated everybody in there because they ticked him off because it delayed him a few months. And he ended up having to call in a few allies with some boats and stuff to where they were distracted defenders while they were building that causeway, but he made sure that Tyre was never independent again. And like you were saying, it's been, Alexander died in 323 BC, so that causeway's been there since. It's been there since before his death.
They built it to last. And Cleopatra is actually his general. That when he died, they split everything that he had conquered up between his next in command, and Cleopatra is the granddaughter or great granddaughter of one of those generals, Ptolemy, that took it over. So she was half Greek or a quarter Greek, however long she was Greek.
Well, because of the way her family genetics were, she identified as a Greek. Most of us, if you go back to our great grandparents, we have 16 sets. Yeah. She had 4.
And half of them were the same person. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Like her she was inbred. She made the guys on the episode of X-Files Home look like they were genetic variants. These guys,
so as smart as they were back then, they still did stupid stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like they believed that to make my family line more pure, I've got to keep it in the family, literally. So a lot of the pharaohs married their sisters and stuff like that. But the Caesars did the same thing in Rome, and that's why you had people like Claudius that was nuts, and Nero that burnt Rome, and he's the emperor, So they were all inbred. A lot worse than them fellas up there in West Virginia.
Yeah, what'd you say?
I said, or Polk County.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a little too close to home. I didn't want them to come up here attacking us with they inbred, cornbread asses, Uncle Dad and all.
I take that back. I am 2.3 million bricks built the pyramid. Each of them weighing 2.5 tons each. They're on the outside of it. You know what I'm saying? So that's just that's why I say when you guys asked me, hey, if you could go back in time, what period would you want to go back to? And that's why I said the pyramids, because man, I would love to actually see how these things were built. I think it'd be awesome if, like, when I stepped out of the DeLorean, I looked up and I seen some aliens, you know, shooting a beam and lifting all these blocks with a laser beam. I think that'd be cool.
I don't think you'd
But,
make it back to our time though, if that really.
Yeah,
what
you know
happened.
why? Because there would be no plutonium to go back in my DeLorean. That's why.
No, because they would
Well, then-
beam you up, bruh. Your name would be Scotty.
But I don't know, man. I really believe that there's a vase that they found like over 100 of these vases, and I can't find the actual name of these vases. You know, like something you'd put flowers in, a vase.
Like a clay
But-
pot or something.
Yeah, but these things are they're black and they're made out of some kind of stone. I forget what stone they said there was, but like, you know,
Well, it's
these
like a-
things.
Like
Go
the
ahead.
Comet, like the comic or the comet rock or whatever that came. That's what they made a lot of the pharaoh's knives out of. Was
Yeah,
that,
this is some kind of stone, but these things were made so well and they're so hard. Like, they've been able to look in there and they see the tooling marks, and they've been able to measure the tooling marks, and it says that, you know, whatever they were using could cut this ever so many turns of the drill went like an inch deep in this rock, right? And I think it's for every 10 turns of the drill, it went, let's say, 1.5 inches into this rock. Well, they have compared it to our best drilling stuff we have today, and we can't even match that today. And but you know, the outside of these vases, there's no tooling marks on the outside. They're completely, they call them the closest thing to perfect that they've ever found. You know, anything that was made, this is the closest thing to perfect they've ever found, and they can't explain how these were made. Go ahead.
well,
Trey.
if you go back a couple hundred years to where the samurai was making samurai swords, all right, we still don't know how they made those exactly because they got them really, really sharp. Well, they figured out that was a long time before the Industrial Revolution, so there was more oxygen in the air. So you could meld, or you could put more iron and make things out of steel better to make it sharper and more sturdy back then, because the fire burned hotter than it does now. So, you know, for our drill, you know, we don't have the oxygen available in the air that they had back then. So their tools were probably a whole lot sharper than even that from a couple hundred years ago in Japan.
You know, that's completely possible. Or it could have been aliens making these things. You know, it could be either one of them. Go ahead, Dusty.
Well, I was going to say there's, speaking on that a little bit, there's a type of metal that was written about in Saudi Arabia, in that area, that they called Damascus. And it's not like the canister Damascus, the canister Damascus that we make now. They said that you could throw a silk scarf in the air and it would just, and as it touched the blade, it would just part it. The blade was so sharp.
Yeah, like on that movie Bodyguard, baby, praise God.
And even the Vikings, there have been there was a type of steel that the Vikings made that they can't recreate that would do something similar. So I mean, I think that's part of that lost technology, that they were able to smelt and mix these alloys together to create these blades that are, you know, create these edges that we can't recreate now, even with outside of using a laser or something to sharpen a blade with.
That's what I'm saying, man.
And if you could get fire that hot, then you would have access to a whole lot more carbon than what our fires produce. And so that goes into making steel and iron and all that too. You gotta have carbon.
Go ahead, buddy.
I feel like I need a PhD to be in this conversation. Dusty just
No, we just got LMNOPs, buddy. We ain't got PhDs. I got us on Sesame Street.
But you know all this is complete. This is the argument that everybody's been having for decades. You know, how were they made? Nobody really knows. And but like I said, I always go back to, I really think before the Egyptians came along, I think there was a civilization before them that we have no idea who they were or anything about them. And I think the Egyptians probably inherited the pyramids and just, you know, used them, you know, just started, you know, like we would find an old building sitting out there, we'd start using it. And I think they just started using it, you know, as their own. I don't think, maybe, I don't know, it's far-fetched, but there's if you'll watch there's a documentary on Netflix called Ancient Apocalypse, and man, it explains all this down to the T. And I'll look up Younger Dryas here in a minute, and it's proven it happened. You know, this thing destroyed all life on Earth. You know, I think it was a little over 12,000, 14,000 years ago. And, you know, we don't have anything, we don't know anything before, you know, that. So who knows what happened?
Well, it's almost like Atlantis. You know, everybody thinks that Atlantis wasn't real, but I think they're starting to find evidence where there really wasn't Atlantis, right?
Oh yeah. I think Atlantis was real just because we haven't found it yet. Because, you know, archaeology, I think that you look how much stuff we find in Egypt and along the Nile down there. And I think the last time I read, when you look at the Nile and the Amazon forest, I think there has only been like 0.2% of it, you know, what is it called? Surveyed and looked at. There's no telling what down there they would still find if they just would, you know, if they had the money to go down through there and you know, actually do whatever it is they do to find this stuff. Go ahead, Dusty.
Not to interrupt, I was going to say, but you know, they said the same thing about the city of Troy that we read about in Greek mythology. They said, oh, it didn't exist, it was imaginary, and the guy who discovered it was an amateur. Was an amateur archaeologist just using the clues that were in Homer's Iliad, and he ended up finding what they now believe to be the civilization of Troy on the coast of Turkey, and come to find out that it had been going through the layers to come to find out that this city had been built and destroyed like something like 18 or 19 different times. And so just all of these different strata where the city was destroyed or burned to the ground or whatever, and then rebuilt in the same place.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, there's
The same thing with Rome.
You know,
I mean, this is like the seventh Rome that's there. I mean, they just built it over on top of the older buildings. And I mean, Seattle, you know, there's town here, and there's like, they call it underground Seattle. You can see where the old beach was, you know, where the ocean came up to Seattle back then, but now it's all higher. They built on top of the old city. And that's just in the last, 200 years or whatever.
Same thing with London and Chicago. That's why Chicago is called the second city, because the first one burned to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. You can even take the Sphinx over there that sits in front of the pyramids. They now know that the Sphinx, all the wear and tear on it is from water wear and tear. So they now, there's evidence to believe that the Sphinx was actually underwater for, you know, a long period of time. And they actually think, because, you know, if you can take a look at the Sphinx, and the head of the Sphinx is smaller than the body, it looks not proportionate to the body of it. And they think that, you know, again, they think that Egypt inherited the Sphinx, that they didn't actually carve it, because the wear and tear on the side of it is done by water, you know. And you think of the Sphinx sitting out in the middle of a desert. And I think they've pretty much 100% proven that it was done by water. So the Sphinx was underwater for a long time. And they actually think that the original head of the Sphinx was a lion, and the Egyptians repurposed it into the face of a pharaoh or something like that.
Or it could have been Anubis too, because Anubis is in a lot of the hieroglyphics inside the pyramids. That's that dog head looking dude.
Yeah, he is, ain't he? He's the one that carries the soul to the afterlife or something like that, ain't he?
Yeah, I mean, these people are real smart, and they're like, let's build these pyramids out here at these rocks and make people wonder what we did, and then let's draw pictures of dog heads on people, you know. So
the pyramids to me are like Stonehenge. You know, how did they get those up there and then stand them up? You know, so.
yeah, well, I mean, they were woodworkers, just like, I mean, there were stone workers, just like there had to be woodworkers. So, you know, just because we haven't found evidence of cranes don't mean there wasn't cranes there, because you know, stone's going to be there forever, but wood won't.
That's what I'm saying. They may have been cranes back in those days, but we have no record or evidence that show that, because whatever was there before the Egyptians, we know the Egyptians didn't have cranes or anything, but you know, in my opinion, we don't know what the civilization before the Egyptians had. They may have had cranes and planes and automobiles, because, you know, there's actually in the hieroglyphics, there's people that look like they got space helmets on, and they're inside of a spaceship and stuff like that. So who knows what those people had?
Or maybe if the Sphinx was underwater, that's
Absolutely.
how they got all them parts to it, and that's how they built it. See, scuba gear and that's down there, and that's just like, I mean, but come on.
Maybe they had
look at the big castles all over Europe. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and that was built in a time that was called the Dark Ages, because everybody was stupid for over 1,000 years. Like, they had not progressed. They didn't know. They didn't create microwaves. They didn't know what caused. They killed all the cats because they were evil, and then that's how they got the plague.
Yeah, they just tossed their poop out the window.
Yeah, well, and the term "it's raining like cats and dogs" is because they built those thatch houses, so they didn't have like a solid roof up there. It was just like hay and stuff like that. So when it would rain, those dogs and cats would like get up on top of the house and they'd fall through. That's where that term come from. So nice. if those dummies could build big castles like that, why couldn't somebody that understood astrology and math, why couldn't they be that much smarter and know how to build the pyramids without us knowing how they did it? You know, because I don't know anybody can build a castle right now.
I could, but that's another story. Go ahead, Dusty. Hold on, Matt.
I was gonna say, you know, with an underwater theory, you know, almost all the ancient civilizations I know of speak of a great flood. It's in the Bible, it's in Mesopotamian, it's in all that. So I wonder if that extinction event is what we read about in the Old Testament as that flood that covered the whole earth. So maybe that stuff was there and then it got covered up. And yeah, it says 40 days and 40 nights, but I mean, you know, you can't really. Some people do,
some global warming, you know, where we have a bunch of ice ages and stuff. Who's to say that we don't have a big meltdown on that same cycle to where the solar caps or the polar caps melt, and that's where all that water come from, the flood too.
Absolutely.
Well, I was gonna say too. I mean, you can't really. It's very hard to. Some people do, but it's hard to establish a timeline with some of the times that are given in certain religious books. You know, there's ancient Sumerian texts that say that there were 7 kings that ruled for like 280,000 years, and then they would reign for like 30,000 years and then die.
Yeah,
they were the Assyrian kings, right? They're right.
Yeah. Matt, what was you going to say, buddy?
You look at, like, you know, we're talking about like Stonehenge and Atlantis, and, you know, Dusty had brought up Troy, and Travis had brought up Rome had been burned down, like destroyed like 8 times. But you look at what the Mayans did and look at what they built. I mean, they're still down there uncovering like whole cities.
Right, they cut hearts out of people and threw them down the steps. You know what I'm saying? They were real savages, man.
I mean, Indiana Jones had to deal with some of that mess. So.
That was in India, bro. That was different kind of heart digging. But
anyways, you go. But if you go through and look at what the Mayans did, I mean, they had like sophisticated calendars. I mean, they had all this crazy. They had like waterways that they had built. So I mean, I think that humans are capable of doing stuff with what they've got at the time, and they had to think outside the box and figure out how to do it. So that's why I think the pyramids were built by people. For what and why and how, we don't really know.
And they had professionals that actually took pride in their job. You know, I mean, that was their way. That was how they made their living. You know, that dude can't cut a block for shit. We'll kill him.
If
we'll
anybody
get somebody that can, you know.
Anybody ever sees this cat in Egypt as a stone, then we'll know something's up.
Well, like they worshipped cats over there, man. Like, you
Yeah,
know,
the old Egyptian Empire actually was defeated because of cats.
Really?
Yeah, they were. It was the end of the old kingdom. There was a slight. The old pharaoh had ticked off, I guess, a political rival in another country, another king. But when the army invaded, they were carrying the sigil of Bastet on their shields. They were literally carrying cats. And Bastet is one of the judges in the afterlife, so the Egyptians would not harm the cats. So they basically just surrendered and gave up. And
crazy. Why are cats so honored over there? What is it about that?
well, it ain't just cats in Egypt. I mean, the Australian army lost a war with emus. And this was in the 1940s and 1950s, really. Like, they went out to kill all these emus because they were like destroying stuff in cities and stuff. And the emus won, dude. Like, they were outflanking them. Like, they just, all right, just give it to them. They can have it. And they had to retreat.
So
And something else, rabbits run Napoleon off. It
Really?
run him off when he was the emperor. He wanted to go hunting. And so this farmer, he had like this huge land area out here, and he had rabbits all over it. Well, he fed them every day. He kept them fed. They wanted to take him to a place where he could just have his free reign of killing all the rabbits he wanted to kill because he was Napoleon. Okay, well, when they got out of the carriages, the rabbits thought it was the farmers coming to feed them, and they attacked all them people looking for the food. And Napoleon had to run off in his cart to get away, and everybody else did too.
that's kind of sad, man, if you
Animals
really
don't
think
mess
about it.
around, man. Hey, we want food. We want it now. Where's it at? You know, you got to leave. Oh, cats probably had their pick of the litter back then too.
Well, but you think about it, you know, Matt mentioned the Wright brothers. When did the Wright brothers invent the plane? When did they take the?
1903.
So if you'll think about how technology goes, you have the Wright brothers. They take their flight, and you said 1903, right?
Kitty Hawk, North Carolina.
Okay, then
1969.
and when did we hit land? When did we quote land on the moon? 65.
69.
July
69.
20th.
So
69,
in 66 years, we go from flying 120 feet to landing on the moon. That's insane, man. You know?
And what's even more impressive is that all the way up until, all right, from Alexander's time up until the 1800s, horse was the fastest way to travel.
Right.
Because trains didn't come out until, 1800s, it was maybe the late 1700s. So, I mean, there was almost 2,000 years there where we had no technology improvements on travel. Horses.
You're right. So what do you think kick-started our technological, rat race we went on?
Roswell.
Amen, brother. Praise God.
I believe that too, because you think about, I'm really big on reverse engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really
we got
believe
fiber optics after that.
Yeah, I think what we've done is we took technology, and I do believe there was a crash here, and I do believe the federal government got to it.
Oh yeah,
I do, and they did build they still got that Area 51 compound there.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that the technology that you see now is derived from that. I don't think we've gotten to the tip of the iceberg of what that thing could probably be.
Absolutely.
But here's what is stupid to me. All right, so we went to the moon 1969. All right, we went 13 times or tried to go. I think they said there's like 13 landings on the moon total.
Can I
That's
say
not
something
counting
real
it.
quick?
No, hold on. So they're saying we've been there 13 times, right? But now they say we can't go there because we don't have the technology. So how
Yeah.
did we go from computers were the size of our houses now to you got a computer in your pocket? We can't go back to the moon. It ain't
No.
moved.
I'll say this: we never went to the moon.
God,
Woo!
I don't think we went to the moon. Maybe we've been to the moon, but we didn't go when we said we went.
Well, why?
See, now,
How did the lunar landing? How did you can still look through a telescope and see the lunar lander sitting there? It's that little golf cart thing they cruised around in.
Well, I ain't never seen it, and the Chinese went up there and said they couldn't find it, so I'll leave it right there.
But the Chinese went. You see what I'm
That
saying?
is yeah. I mean, hey,
If they could do
I'll
it, why
say,
couldn't we do it?
go ahead, Matt.
Here's what I think happened, and this honest to God truth. Here's what I think happened. Richard Nixon took office in 1969, and he wanted to start his presidency with a bang. And you got to realize that they're still in a Cold War at that point.
Exactly.
What better flex do you have as a country to get to the moon before anybody else does? Even if you can't do it, you can manufacture it and say, "Hey, we beat everybody."
Exactly.
Later we went when we actually had all the stuff together. So
But the only way three people keep us
said, but I think we got there later for sure. I think it was just try to flex a little bit on China, Russia for sure.
But the only way three people can keep a secret is if two of them are dead. There's no way everybody in Houston that worked at NASA can keep a secret like that.
Well, even Neil Armstrong, they asked him on national television, "Hey, what's the biggest something about the moon?" And he looked at him and said, "Hey, we didn't go."
But he also said that when they did go, that there were structures on the dark side of the moon. So which one of his stories do you believe? There was somebody was there first, or we didn't go?
I probably believe both of them, just to be honest with you. I don't think we went to the moon. I think we may have been to the moon, but I definitely don't think we went in 1969. You're not going to tell me that, hey, we used to go to the moon, bruh, but we ain't going to go back no more because we forgot how to do it.
Well, but
man, get out of here. That's about like saying, hey, we didn't see that guy on the top of that building shooting at Trump the other day.
Or it might be just like saying, we could build pyramids and we can't now, though.
Well, here's the thing about the pyramids. We can talk about the pyramids all night, but at the end of the day, it's going to be what Travis thinks, what Matt thinks, what Dusty, what Corky thinks, because we don't know.
I think there's a gray area where everybody's kind of right and everybody's a whole lot wrong, just like science and religion. There's a gray area between both, okay? But I mean, if we can forget how the pyramids were built, and basically we're stacking blocks, we're cutting blocks, we're stacking blocks. We don't know how to do that anymore, and we've got all this machinery. Why couldn't we forget how to go to the moon? I mean, yeah, it sounds stupid, but there's so much stuff flying around the earth now that we left.
One of the reasons why we're not going to forget today, as of why we could have forgotten how the pyramids were built, because we didn't have TV cameras filming them build the pyramids. You know, supposedly we've got TV cameras showing us going to the moon. And there's still people alive today that were part of those missions where, you know, I can't go talk to some pharaoh that, you know, oh, yeah, that's how we built the pyramids. That is so. And have you ever watched any of the videos of the moon landing? Dude, they're faker than a $2 bill. You can actually see one of the astronauts fall over, and you can see a cord pick him up and make it look like he's, you know, in lighter gravity. We may have been to the moon, but we did not go in 1969. We done that just to flex on the Russians. I'll take that to my grave.
Dusty, what do you think about that?
Study long,
What do
study
you think,
wrong.
Daniel?
I think we
know.
were trying to build pyramids on the moon is what we were trying to do.
Maybe we used moon rocks to build pyramids.
Yeah. Just needs a book,
But
man.
Yes.
I think we went to the moon, but I think it's just like any other technology. If this country comes out with the technology, it's not long before this other country knows how they do it and they make their own. If we don't destroy whatever technology we had, then everybody's getting up there. Now, of course, they're getting there now, but it's been what, 50 years, you know?
has it been that long? Dang.
1969.
Yeah, it's 41 or 31 plus, 55 years, man.
Yeah,
Well,
I
here's how I tie this whole conversation in together. I really believe that in 1947, Roswell happened. And from that, we get on this technological, burst that we got from the Roswell landings, which, I think the microchip came out of that, fiber optics came out of that. I think we got all that from that, whatever happened there. So if any of that stuff. So here's my thing. And I also think this, if an alien or whatever you want to call it has a ship that's good enough to transverse the universe and come visit us, that sucker ain't going to crash, So it's probably a plant. They probably, because if you think if you're an advanced life form and you see this planet here and you say, oh, these guys, maybe they're going to be able to make it, but you want to like sprinkle a little spice on them just to help them get along. So maybe they come along, drop a ship, and let's see what they can do with it, So who's to say they didn't do that back in the day with the Egyptians and say, hey, this right here is how you move this block. Let's see what they build with it. You know what I'm saying?
What if oxygen is their alcohol, man, and they was just drunk and they crashed their little, flying saucer or whatever? I mean, if they're going that fast, maybe they was training a pilot. You know what I'm saying? I mean, maybe this is where they come to practice. I mean, because to them, we'd have to be ants. I mean, are you really worried about if ants can build that hill bigger? I don't want to give any information to ants. If we're that insignificant to them, you know what I'm saying? Why would they care to give us any information at all?
That's why aliens don't land in Times Square,
Right.
They lock the door.
I believe aliens are out there. I really believe that, but I kind of go back and forth on it because I've seen the footage that the Pentagon's released and stuff like that of, their F-16s chasing them. I mean, you can't deny the radar stuff and you can't deny the generals and shit talking about that. So that is actually, that's fact. So you got to deal with that. So we know that stuff's out there. We know it's not made. So, but my question is, what are they doing just flying by? Why don't they just land on the White House lawn or in Times Square and say, hey, here we are. What's up?
Look what we did to the mines when we landed on the peninsula down there, and they all died. They don't want to die from COVID.
All right, check it out. I got an answer for this. So I told you guys a few weeks ago that I'm probably a bigger Star Trek fan than I am of Star Wars. Well, the mission on Star Trek is to boldly go where no man's gone before, whatever. So in the world of Star Trek, if they're kicking it through the galaxy, chilling, drinking some Romulan ale while they're floating through the galaxy, they come upon a planet that they see has life forms on it. Now, the prime directive in that universe is to observe, not interfere with. So I really think if I'm an advanced life form and we know, hey, planet, this blue planet right here, it does, life is on it. So if you're that advanced as a life form, you're obviously going to have a scientific mind. You're going to be curious, but you also know that, hey, life has to take its own course. So I think if there is a life form out there, and I really believe there is, that they probably operate something like they do on Star Trek. They observe, but they don't interfere because we have to, take our own path. But that's why, you have our atomic missile silos. There's been several times where those things were about to go off and these UFOs, appear over those atomic missile silos, and they've actually disarmed our atomic bombs. And that's
cautiously.
fact.
So they're
Yeah.
cautiously curious.
But
because we have
but
that
they're not going to,
information.
they're not going to let us destroy ourselves at the end of the day. So basically I think we're an science experiment for them, all right, this planet has life. Let's observe them. And every now and then we're going to drop a little gift for them and see what they do with it. And that's what
Well,
I think the Roswell crash was.
What would be the best place to observe a planet like ours from?
In the ocean.
No, I think it'd be the moon. You have
And the moon.
You have complete vision of the whole thing, and the moon don't spin, so you never
That's
have
what
to
I'm
move
saying.
your bases.
And where at on the moon? The dark
The
side
dark
of the moon.
side, where Neil Armstrong, who has never been to the moon, said that he saw stuff.
Exactly, right, where we can't see if we try. But that's what I believe. I think we're basically a science experiment. They're going to observe us, and throughout history, they give us little Easter eggs and see what we do with it. Could have been how they built the pyramids. Could have been how with Roswell, and who knows what we'll get next.
Hey,
But
well,
I think at the end of the day,
there's an actual newspaper from medieval times in like the 1400s, 1500s, to where it has illustrations of an aerial battle going on. Of course, we know
Yeah.
flight didn't happen until 1903, and they could tell it happened for like weeks, and it moved across the European continent. Like they could tell which side was winning. That's a newspaper you can actually look up and read.
Well, there's actually documented in the logs, Christopher Columbus seen flying objects in the ocean and in the ocean too, that he couldn't explain, like bright
And
lights and stuff like that.
Yeah, said they were so bright you could see the reflection off the wooden ships.
Right.
More UFOs than any place in the world?
Where's that?
Russia, because they've got the biggest landmass.
Yeah. And but also, who knows what they're doing with nuclear weapons? Because I really believe part of it, I say prime directive just because that's what Star Trek says, but I think, they always say they'll intervene before we destroy ourselves. Who knows what Russia's doing? That's maybe why they're there watching them so much, because there's no telling what kind of experiments them fools is doing, and they happen to keep a better eye on them than they do everybody else.
Or they might just let us kill each other off, and then they'll be like, "Hey, now we've got this planet, and we don't have to be cautious anymore. We can go down here and we can observe
They're waiting for you from Cochrane to be born.
I think if you're that advanced of a life form, I think, you've got to be past ego. You've got to be past, all this other stuff. I think at this point, they generally just want to see life evolve,
What if it's just humans coming back in time?
It could be.
And you look at quantum physics, you can't go back in time because
they said that it's not a mathematical problem with going back in time. It's an engineering problem. That's what the Japanese guy said. Was I can't think of his name.
That Mikio guy.
He's on every.
That's him. Kaku, yeah.
But he said it's an engineering problem. So the theory of relativity, Einstein talks about how you can go further into the future, but those same mathematics apply for going backwards, but it's an engineering problem that, it all deals with speed, and that's where you get quantum physics, where, and that was invented to disprove the theory of relativity, but that's where they get all these ideas of wormholes and things like that, so you can travel vast distances and not have to take 1,000 years to get there.
Right.
Because light moves at 243,000 miles per second, and it still takes, they say, it takes 1,000 light years to get to that star.
Yeah.
So if light is going that fast and it still takes it 1,000 years to get there, how long is it going to take us to go? And we can't even get anywhere close to the speed of light as far as aircraft go.
Right. Yeah. God, well, basically, we would never get there. Is basically what that says.
Right. So I mean, you would have to have some kind of wormhole deal,
Yeah.
you know. And I don't know anybody that smart. Of course, I never would because I live in Athens, Tennessee. You know, there, sorry to say, there's nobody going to be on Star Talk from Athens.
You never know, man.
But I think if you're talking about like, intergalactic astronauts, I guess would be a better way
Right.
than aliens. I mean, it's possible. I do believe, because we do know there are things that we factually know, that we do know there's other galaxies. We do know that there's other things out there, but we don't know what it is. But we are
Right.
seeing things on this planet. I don't know, man. I mean,
And there's only so far that we can see into the
Yeah.
universe because it's curved.
Yeah.
So far
Right.
out, we can't see past that bubble.
Yeah, so we do know that stuff's for sure. I do believe that things have been reverse engineered to get what we got now. I do believe that. But I don't know. Corky might be right. They might just be here to observe, because they're not here to conquer, obviously, because
Or they would have done it. Yeah.
it ain't like we could fight them back. So I don't
Or
think.
they've just got plenty of time to observe, because before you attack, you scout out your objectives.
Yeah, but look how
we're always moving and always building. So
this place wouldn't be hard to take over if you're an advanced civilization from the planet Neptron.
well,
I mean,
right, but
we'll roll up
are
and-
you trying? But are you trying to destroy the planet? I mean, I'm sure they've got stuff that could destroy us, but it would also destroy the planet. So maybe they want to get rid of us and keep the planet because their planet's dying. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there could be 100 ways of why they haven't tried to kill us.
I tell you who gave the roadmap to do it. It was Thanos, because he already
Right.
he could do it. He already flexed and said
And it's
he
purple.
just rode up. He just rode up. Said, "Hey, this is what's going to happen."
And that's why they sent Barney first, because he's all about give me a hug, let's drink some beer and have a good time on the playground. And then Thanos rolls in being the same color, and we think, oh, he just wants to hug us. No, man, he wants to snap his fingers and kill everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
He got all the Infinity Stones. It's over.
He's got all those pimp rings on his hand, man. He's gonna put the smackdown on somebody. We the hoes, and we go get the smackdown. That's what it is. He's
Yes.
sending in the dudes to take a look to see how many hoes he got smacked down, put on the corner. I know how it is.
That's a really good segue into next week's episode, Corky.
Amen. Praise God.
Thanos.
Yeah. The Marvel, I think next week we'll do the Marvel movies, and that's going to be awesome. So save any more Marvel comments for next week. But
And for how stupid you think our theories are on pyramids and aliens.
I don't. Well, first off, let me be straight there, but I don't think anybody's theory about the pyramids is stupid, because at the end of the day, they ain't none of us know.
Well, right. But there's going to be somebody on Facebook that knows.
Oh, I thought you was talking about me personally.
No. No, I'm talking about the people that listen that thinks we're all kooks. And, we worship Tyson, that guy on Star Talk,
Yeah,
So-
Neil deGrasse.
Now, he's awesome,
man.
dude.
Yeah, I watch it all the time.
Yeah, he's
But,
awesome.
If anybody asks my opinion though, and go back to the pyramid thing before we close it out for tonight, in my opinion, lost civilization. And I think at the end of the day, people are going to laugh, but I think at some point we had to be helped by the aliens, just like I think we were helped in 47, and I think we'll be helped again in the future. So, but that's my opinion. Travis thinks we floated them down here in the water, and I don't know what Dusty thinks.
Hard
but
work and professionalism. How I think
hard
it was
work and
built.
elbow grease lifted those 10-ton blocks 400 feet in the air. So
Dusty, what do you think about that?
How do I think they were built?
Yeah.
I think it was a combination. I think it was a combination of them utilizing the technology that they had available at the time. As I said, I mean, to me, I don't think it would be very hard to, one, create a barge, to float the stones down the Nile,
Now you may be
able to
right
get-
there because there was a lot of water back in those days. I'm open to that.
The picture I've got in my head is almost this boat is almost like Lincoln logs. So you can disassemble the boat and then be able to use those logs to where you can get that stone onto there, and then you roll it forward, and you grab that back log, move it to the front, and you just walk it all the way
Yeah.
up there. And there's nothing saying that they couldn't use that wood to turn around and
Transport.
utilize some sort of and make a form and make some kind of a ramp to where you could move that.
You may be right.
To where, I mean, they did it. I mean, they did it. The Romans did it when they stormed Masada a few centuries later. They moved, I forget how many million, several 100,000 tons of earth to build this ramp, and it's still there. They completely changed the countryside just like Alexander did.
Well, as far as the Romans goes, look at the Colosseum, man. Look what they were able to build back in those days. Back when the Colosseum was new, that was like it. That was a beautiful structure, and it even had under it was like up and under it. Wasn't there like rivers under it and with water and everything up and under it?
They could
They
feel
would- they would flood it
could
during
feel
naval
it with
battle.
water.
Yeah, that's what they do. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it had
they had
a
elevators.
retractable roof.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
You know, the Inglewood Coliseum was pretty awesome. I'm just saying.
I don't think it leaked because it had a retractable roof. I think there were other reasons it leaked.
But as far
Rain got in.
as far as
Brandon got
as
the
far as
dogs in
aliens go, there's a quote from Carl Sagan I really love, and it says, "Either we are alone in the universe or we're not. Either one is equally terrifying."
That's true.
That's true. Yeah.
Or and mine is from Stephen Hawking that said, if aliens came to Earth, it would be a lot like when Christopher Columbus came to the Americas. You know, it's really good for Europe, but it sucked for the Indians. And if aliens get here, we're the Indians.
It reminds me of a quote too that I heard that applies here. It's from Nike. It's called "Just Do It."
Just take us out, aliens.
Just do it.
Ready.
Show me how
Daniel,
big
you've
the
been
rest
too
of
quiet
the
tonight, man.
are, and you roll up in here.
Don't
and
take
you
any
just do it.
blankets.
Just do it.
No quarter.
No.
Hold on,
quarter.
I got to know one thing before we sign off here. Daniel is usually one of the most talkative people in this podcast, has been totally silent tonight. You have to tell us how you think the pyramids were built.
I have no clue how the pyramids were built, but I know that the reason why we lost the technology is because of Jeremy Martin. Jeremy Martin made you fail the first grade. He kept you talking. Everything's his fault. So
If it
that's
all
the
goes
reason.
Christmas.
That's
Dang
the
it,
reason why
man.
we lost the. That's the reason why we lost technology right there. See,
And that's the most plausible answer right there, I believe.
Yeah, I think we figured it out. So at the end of the day, Jeremy Martin built the pyramids.
hey, and destroyed your life. And he's probably the reason why the Inglewood Coliseum leaks.
He's probably that reason.
You're probably right.
Oh, man. Well, okay. Next week, we're going to be talking the Marvel Universe movies. Be ready for that. If you got any questions, email them to thedubash@outlook.com. And for all of us, we'll see you next week. Deuces. Man, you guys got to start saying bye, man.
You always say bye, and it's
You didn't
always
even give us an introduction today.